So reading from Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita, chant Hare Krishna and fight. Since arriving in Bhubaneswar, Srila Prabhupada had several times talked about going to Jagannath Puri, about an hour away. Since he had hopes of one day building a big centre in Puri, he wanted to see some plots of land for sale. He hadn't been to Puri, he said, since 1958. Since his Western disciples were not allowed to enter the Jagannath temple, Prabhupada said he would not enter either. He would go to Puri to see what land was available. Early one morning, Prabhupada set out in his car for Puri on the Bay of Bengal. He looked at several properties there, but either their locations were poor or the buildings were deteriorated, or both. Prabhupada walked along the beach with his man and the surf was pounding. I was jumping here, he laughed. In 1920 or 21, I came here. At that time I was married. I was married in 1918. I came after appearing for my BA examination. And because I was jubilant, I was jumping. When the waves came, I was jumping. Now it is 57 years after. They say we do not change bodies, but where is that body? Now I am walking with stick. Then I was jumping. I am still here. I remember, but the body has changed. Where is the difficulty to understand? I am the same. I am the same. Otherwise, how I am remembering all these things, but the body is now lost. Tata deha prapti. Why this simple philosophy these rascals cannot understand? Prabhupada stayed a day at the beachside tourist bungalow, and one of his godbrothers, Shyamasundar Brahmachari, from the local Purushottama Gaudiya Math, visited. After he left, Sri Seva Shivarath, a member of the Pujari committee of the Jagannath temple, also came to visit. Prabhupada spoke to him about the possibility of ISKCON devotees entering the Jagannath temple. To bar the Western Vaishnavas from entering the temple was prejudiced and ignorant. Since the members of the Krishna consciousness movement were fully engaged in spiritual life, they should not be considered unfit simply because of their birth, status, or race. Seva Shiva Rath was friendly and agreed with Srila Prabhupada. He promised he would do what he could to help. He also told Prabhupada about a book he had just published and invited him to attend a small Pandal meeting the next evening, at which the book would be inaugurated. Prabhupada agreed. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's the 5th canto. It's chapter 13, Rahugana converses with Jad Bharat, and its text 6. Kvachid Vitoya Salito Biyati Kvachid Vitoya Salito Biyati Parasparam Chalashete Niranda Parasparam Chalashete Niranda Asaja davam kvachid agnitapto ashadya davam kvachid agnitapto nividyate kwa cha yakshya hritashu nividyate kwa cha yakshya hitasu kvachid vitoya sarito biyati parasparam chalashate niranda asajyadavam kvachid agnitapto nevidyate kwacha yakshya hritasu kvachid vitoya sarito biyate parasparam chalashate naranda asajyadavam kvachid agnitapto nividyate kwacha yakshya hritasu. Kvachid vitoya sarito biyati parasparam chalashate naranda asajyadavam kvachid agnitapto nevidyate kwacha yakshya hritasu. Kvachid vitoya sarito biyati parasparam chalasate vidanda asajyadavam kvachid agnitapto nevidyate kwaya chaksha hitasu. Kvachid, sometimes, vitoya, without depth to the water. Sarita, rivers. Abhiyati, he goes to bathe or jumps into. Parasparam, one another. Cha, and. Alashate, desires. Niranda, being with no stock of food. Asaja, experiencing. Dhavam, a forest fire in family life. Kvachit, sometimes. Agnitapta, burned by fire. Nividyate, is despondent. Kwa, somewhere. Cha, and. Yakshai, by kings resembling rogues and thieves. Hrita, taken away. Asu, wealth which is as dear as one's life. Translation. Sometimes the conditioned soul jumps into a shallow river, or being short of food grains, he goes to beg food from people who are not at all charitable. Sometimes he suffers from the burning heat of household life, which is like a forest fire. And sometimes he becomes sad to have his wealth, which is as dear as life, plundered by kings in the name of heavy income taxes. Responsibly, please. Sometimes the conditioned soul jumps into a shallow river, or being short of food grains, he goes to beg food from people who are not at all charitable. Sometimes he suffers from the burning heat of household life, which is like a forest fire. And sometimes he becomes sad to have his wealth, which is as dear as life, plundered by kings
in the name of heavy income taxes. Papa Shil Prabhupada Ki Jai. When one is hot due to the scorching sun, one sometimes jumps into a river to gain relief. However, if the river is almost dried up and the water is too shallow, one may break his bones by jumping in. The conditioned soul is always experiencing miserable conditions. Sometimes his efforts to get help from friends are exactly like jumping into a dry river. By such actions, he does not derive any benefit. He only breaks his bones. Sometimes, suffering from a shortage of food, one may go to a person who is neither able to give charity nor willing to do so. Sometimes one is stationed in household life, which is compared to a forest fire. Samsara davan alalida loka. When a man is heavily taxed by the government, he becomes very sad. Heavy taxation obliges one to hide his income, but despite this endeavour, the government agents are often so vigilant and strong that they take all the money anyway, and the conditioned soul becomes very aggrieved. The people are trying to become happy within the material world, but this is like trying to be happy in a forest fire. No one need go to a forest to set it ablaze. Fire takes place automatically. Similarly, no one wants to be unhappy in family life or worldly life, but by the laws of nature, unhappiness and distress are forced upon everyone. To become dependent on another's maintenance is very degrading. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, everyone should live independently. Only the Shudras are unable to live independently. They are obliged to serve someone for maintenance. It is said in the Shastras, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. In this age of Kali, everyone is dependent on another's mercy for the maintenance of the body. Therefore, everyone is classified as a Shudra. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that in Kali Yuga, the government will levy taxes without reciprocally benefiting the citizens. Anavrishya vinangshanti, durbiksha kara pidita. In this age there will be also a shortage of rain, therefore a scarcity of food will arise, and the citizens will be very much harassed by government taxation. In this way, the citizens will abandon their attempts to lead a peaceful life and will leave their homes and hearths to go to the forest in sheer disappointment. Om Ajnanatimiranda Shyagananjana Shalakaya Chakshamlitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stavitam Yena Bhutalayam Swayambhuva Padamayam Pada Dadati Padantikam Dadati Swa Padantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhattarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, household life. Since the conditioned soul, sometimes he jumps into the river, but it's a shallow one, so that's not much good. Or then he tries to beg, and people are unchargeable, so that doesn't work. And in household life, it goes like a forest fire, and then he gets all his wealth taken off him by the government. So, not a very rosy picture. It's being painted here by Jad Bharat of material life. So when I was reading it, I was just reflecting that a lot of what goes on in today's society, we just accept that that's what it is. It's normal. You know, don't expect to walk down here late at night and not get mugged, because that's just what it is. You've got to be realistic. You know, that's the way it is. And of course, you have to be taxed. That's the way it's always been. And you just comply with what it is and what the standards are and how bad food is now. They reckon people are more sick now because the food has so little nutrition. That's why people are so fat in countries like America, because they eat more to try and get the same nutrition. The body's starved of nutrition. But because the food they're eating is so garbage, they have to eat more and more of it to try and get the nutrition. So then they end up obese. And the food has got preservatives in. So much so that when the person dies, it takes his body 3 days longer to decompose because he stays fresh longer, because all the food inside the body is full of so much preservative. And so that's just normal. We just accept that when you eat, you won't feel much energy from it, and the water won't taste too good, and the air doesn't smell too nice, and there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of people, and none of these people are not very charitable, and if they see you in a distressed condition, then it's normal not to expect people to help much. So so the Bhagavatam is contrasting that with what life should be like, how we should be leading our lives. So it's predicted, and Prabhupada refers to the 12th canto, that in Kali Yuga, the government will levy taxes without reciprocally benefiting the citizens, and he gives the Sanskrit for that as well. Anavrishcha vinangshanti debiksha kara pidita. So they'll just leave in their droves from the cities, and they'll go to the hills. They'll head for the hills. Now we're on a hill in Lesmahago, so watch out. And we've got land as well. So the real wealth is land and manpower to grow. And Srila Prabhupada said one time, this was in the very early days, Rameshwar was saying to Srila Prabhupada, well, we're trying to make devotees, Srila Prabhupada, but they're not very austere, so it's very difficult. And then Prabhupada said, therefore, go to farm. Have farm, so that these people who are not so austere can live simply, because on the farm, it doesn't have to be such hard work, actually. If you're not a greedy farmer, and you just need enough to get by, then nature has arranged it that you can grow at this time, and then you wait, you harvest, and then you spend the winter in front of your log fire eating chapatis from grains that you've grown earlier on that year. So that's the good life, the simple life. Then you've got plenty of time to read and chant and have kirtan together and talk about the goal of life and glorify the Supreme Lord. And believe it or not, if you do that, you'll be really satisfied, because sam siddhiya hari toshanam. If Hari is toshanam, if Krishna is pleased, then sam siddhiya, all perfection is there, if Hari is pleased. So instead of being selfish and trying to please ourselves, we put Krishna in the center and please him, and we lead a life, a God-centered life. So if we can't lead such an austere life and give out lots of books and be a brahmachari or a brahmacharini, then we can go to the farm. Any questions or comments? So people may say, well, you're painting a very dark picture here. You're saying people are trying to become happy in the material world. And Prabhupada's saying, but it's like trying to be happy in a forest fire. So there were two lazy men. The king wanted to know who the two laziest men were in his kingdom. So they invited everyone for a feast in the assembly hall. And while they were having the feast, they set it on fire. And everyone ran out. And there was just two men still there. And they were that lazy, they weren't even sitting up to eat. They were lying down and eating the food. And his friend said, it's getting a bit hot in here, isn't it? And the other one said, well, just roll over on the other side. So people are trying to be happy in a forest fire, and then they try to make some adjustment. Well, it seems to be really, really hot here, so maybe if I roll over on the other side. So because they're spiritually lazy, they're not thinking, well, maybe I should just vacate the assembly hall. Maybe I should just stop trying to be happy in the material world and accept that this is a futile endeavor. Try and find and see what my options are. Of course, the sad thing is the way the educational system is arranged, children are not given many options, really. They have to slot into an economical mechanism and become a cogwheel. And the higher up the mechanism you go, the more money you can make, and that's considered success. And it doesn't really fulfill the living entity's real needs. His real need is to be eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. So you don't get that by making money, acquiring money. In fact, the money is acquired and it's taken off you. It's a little bit like that game, if anyone's ever played that game, Monopoly, and you accumulate a lot of money and you're thinking, I'm winning the game, and then you land on the wrong housing estate, and you don't own the houses there, and the person's got lots of houses, and you have to pay, and you see all your lovely money getting taken away from you. So that's the game of Monopoly. Everyone's trying to monopolize everybody else, and unfortunately nobody wins the game, everyone loses. So imagine saying that to a load of kids. Hey kids, let's play a game. Oh really, what's the game? Well, the game is, it's going to make us really miserable. Oh, okay. And at the end you'll feel really sad, and nobody has got a chance of winning the game. It's just the way it's set up. Want to play? Not really, no. I think I could find something better to do with my time. You have that game in Lithuania, Monopoly? Tuning everybody in, you see, how to take part in the economic system where nobody wins. Everyone loses, actually. Even the ones that have accumulate some wealth. The more you make, the more you're taxed. Once it gets past a certain bracket, it's a huge percentage that's taken off you. So that's a funny picture, isn't it? A man jumping into a river, and he jumps in, and then he realizes that it's actually dried up, and then he breaks his bones. So Prabhupada's saying that in Kali Yuga everyone is Shudra, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. So because everyone is Shudra, then they can't live independently. So they're in a situation where they're being exploited. Just like the cattle that they eat, they end up sharing the same fate as the cattle. And they're just like a harvest. You just you rear them in schools, you send them out to the factories, and then you tax the living daylights out of them. They say the only two things you can be sure of are death and taxation. And in Kali Yuga, you're taxed to death. Everything is cheated away from you. And it's becoming more blatantly obvious now that we're being cheated. They're flaunting how they're cheating us. At one time they were trying to do it in a more inconspicuous way, but now it's out in broad daylight. They're openly cheating us. So that's unfortunately what's going on. Anyway, we all know that to some degree. So what are the options? So the educational system doesn't really provide many options. Just different ways of being exploited. You can be exploited this way or that way or the next way. But no real solution as to what are we here for, how do we achieve our goal, and how do we become independent actually and sustainable. How do we sustain our existence in a way which is not dependent upon the circumstances around us. So that means developing good character, developing good integrity, and real practical skills, how to grow, how to make your own house, how to generate your own heat and water. This is real education, not making people so that they're so dependent that they can't do the slightest thing for themselves. If something goes wrong in the house, they have to bring somebody else in to fix it, rather than learning how to do everything themselves. So that's how they should be getting trained. That's real education. But they're being tuned in a way to become dependent, so that they just become a greedy consumer, and just keep throwing away things that you're buying and buying new ones. And we'll provide you with things that are so useless that they break after 1 year. So you just keep throwing things away and keep buying them more and more and more and more. And we'll keep making things seem better than the last things we've sold you to make you keep throwing away even things which are perfectly good, because we've got something better than that now. So now you can throw that phone away, you can throw that computer away, and those trousers are the wrong style, so you can throw those away. But if you keep them long enough, they'll be back in style, so you could just wait. Just a question of time. And that haircut is useless. You need to pay to get this one instead. And so this way people are kept dissatisfied. See, if people are satisfied, then they don't buy things. It's only dissatisfied people that keep buying things. If you're satisfied, then you don't need, you're just happy, you've got your coat and your pair of trousers and your wellies for going around the garden, and everything's fine, and you're satisfied, and you don't have to buy lots of different types of food because you grow your own food, and you enjoy the taste and the wholesomeness of that, so you don't want to trade it for something lesser. And it's interesting how people are trying to meet their needs at very, very high costs, because when we talk about cost, really when we talk about money, money represents time. So the money is earned after a certain amount of time that you've expended to earn that money. So they take the time off you and they give you the money instead. And so you spend a lot of time earning money to buy things that you don't really need. In fact, your whole life is robbed from you, really. So that's a very high cost you're paying to satisfy your needs. And if people were more in tune with, well, what are my needs? I just want to be somewhere warm, somewhere safe, with some good food on the table, in good company. That's my real needs. So why do I have to work so hard and pay so much for that? So Krishna consciousness is offering the alternative, giving people the option. Do you want to be part of a system that has no concern for you and will just exploit you to the fullest extent? Or do you want to be part of a system where you can be in the association of people who are your well-wishers, who are well-intentioned and compassionate, and would like to bring out a better version of you, so that you develop emotionally, mentally, physically, intellectually, spiritually. You can become nourished and developed and become a better version of yourself. So who would say, if you stopped somebody and said, would you like to be better than you are now in a year from now, or would you like to be worse than you are now? Nobody's going to say, I want to be worse. So they say, oh yeah, I'd like to be better next year than I am now. Okay, so what means will you employ to become a better person? Well, I'll earn more money and I'll buy more things and I'll become so happy that I'll be nice to everybody. Nope, doesn't work. Didn't work last year, or the year before, or the year before, or the lifetime before. And it won't work. Just like Christmas, it doesn't work, does it? And it's just how many Christmases does it take before you realize it doesn't work? When you're a kid, you think it's going to work. But as you get older, you see it doesn't really work. Any questions or comments? Is it a dark picture? Why are we painting a dark picture of material life? Why are we pessimistic? Surely we should just make the most of life and get on with it and be positive and look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
With the way that society's going now, they're not leaving anything for maybe the next generation. In Germany, the students were revolting, they didn't see any point in going to school because there was nothing to work for.
Yeah, there was a statistic I just read that by 2030 we'll need 2 Earths to sustain the demand that we're making on the resources. We need 2 Earths by 2030. So that's only 9 years, 8.5 years from now. If we carry on as we are right now, then Greta Thunberg will be right.
A couple of decades ago, they worked it out that 50% more to supply. They also worked out that 50% of what was required, what they're presently using is for some for vegetation, but half of it was for animal livestock.
Yeah.
So they just have to cut out that, and there's the problem solved.
Yeah. Yes, so just going vegetarian would be a huge step forward in terms of how we're using the resources, because so much land is being used to fatten up animals, so much water to do that, and that same land can yield 10 times the amount of food with less expenditure. So you can see how we could be much more effective just by being vegetarian.
Did the carbon literacy course with Prabhupada and a couple other devotees. So there is now a common understanding, because climate change is a big issue, and so there's a common understanding that the best way you can reduce the impact, of what the humans are producing to cause the climate change is actually by reduce consumption. So the companies now actually manage to adjust the way they're running business to reduce carbon significantly, in terms of using technologies and etc. But something that is not changing is actually people's consumption. That is the biggest challenge, how to impact people's behavior, that they are not, to reduce this consuming mentality and reduce the consumption.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are actually starting to align with Krishna conscious principles, so you can feel that we have more and more to offer to the society if we can actually show self-sustainable farm and the life and etc. That is actually, the world is really looking for solutions.
Yeah, consumerism, uncontrolled consumerism, due to the fact that people aren't very satisfied, so they keep accumulating more and more. And in America now, the biggest business is storage, because they haven't got enough room to stick it in the house, so they have to store it somewhere, rather than just say, look, we can't get any more clothes in the bedroom, why don't we just call it a day? No, what we can do is we can get some storage, and then we can buy more stuff, then we'll have more room to put clothes in and stuff. And they say that if you take the average woman's wardrobe, 1/3 of it she never wears, another third is rarely worn, and then 1/3 is actually what gets worn on a regular basis. So that's 2/3 of the clothes that can get chucked out. And they say if you take the average American's plate, he only needs 1/3 for actual survival, and the other 2/3 is just utter overindulgence. And it would actually be doing him a favour if you went over to him and said, let's see your plate, and you just scraped 2/3 of it off to go and feed some starving people, and gave him that third back, and then he'd feel a lot better after eating it. Wouldn't be all stuffed. When the body's so stuffed, then there's no room to digest it. So the whole idea of eating is to get energy and nutrition from the food. So isn't it funny that you eat 3 times what you need to, but you get more nutrition by eating 1/3, because your body can assimilate that better, can break it down, turn it into the proper amino acids and whatever else that the body needs. So by eating less, they actually eat more, they actually get more from it than by eating more, because they overstuff the whole system that much. And there's a thing in Sanskrit called ama, and ama is a deposit that lies on the inside of the vein. So if you're eating and eating and eating and it's not digesting properly, instead of breaking down into the proper proteins, it turns into ama, which is like a kind of sticky thing. It sits inside all the veins, and then the heart is trying to pump the blood through. And because the veins are smaller inside, it's taking more pressure to pump the blood through, to get it to the parts of the body that it's needed to get to. So the heart starts to get strained, trying to pump this blood through, because the body's clogged up with ama, because in the first place the person was too gluttonous. If he'd have eaten less, he could have digested it better, and the toxins would have been eliminated, and the heart could beat nicely, and everything would function in the body properly.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge they face is actually how to change people's behavior, because people are unwilling. And as you said, they won't change unless there is some satisfaction. No matter how much, because who wants to consume less? It's like it's austerity is miserable. Like there was this cut bedroom or whatever taxes. Everybody's just protesting. Nobody wants. They call it austerity, and no to austerity. So the only way is actually that people become satisfied, and therefore it's also a pressure on ourselves that we are satisfied with a simple life, because it will be difficult to convince anybody else if we ourselves are consumers.
To just be satisfied is an austerity. To just say, well, look, like it or lump it, just this is it. So just accept that. So the way the kids are educated is, well, you shouldn't be satisfied. It's good to be dissatisfied, because then it'll make you want to go out and try harder and offer more of a contribution to society. So therefore, don't be satisfied. And the whole Vedic culture is completely opposite. The antithesis is learn to be satisfied, learn to be very simple, and learn to be minimalistic, and learn to be satisfied that way. And just accumulating. There was a program called the Wombles, and there were these little things that lived under the ground, and we used to just get rubbish and take it in, and all their house was made up of like rubbish, That's how they lived, just accumulating garbage. So people are like little Wombles, wobbling around, accumulating stuff. So it starts with the educational system. That's why I think it would be really nice to have more contact with young people, allowing us into the classroom and speaking to kids maybe from 11 upwards, and just some basic questions, explain the relative principles, the law of karma, the nature of the soul, Satchitananda, meditation. I mean, this would be amazing. If I'd had this happen to me when I was a kid at school, it would have had a big impact. I used to watch Kung Fu, Grasshopper, and I used to think that's amazing. He's getting all this far out knowledge from these. I wish I could be like that. So, and it was a very attractive program. So, I'm sure kids would love it if a shaven-headed monk or a nun in sari came with tila and gave them a few words of wisdom. Children are quite impressionable at that age, and then as they grow up, they're made to feel, due to the false ego, that they have to ascribe to a certain philosophy and outlook on life. Otherwise, they're considered weird and inferior in some way. So it'd be good to do that, to plant those seeds in the kids' minds and let them percolate in the back of their subconscious, and then as they grow up, they'll see these things being confirmed. So that would be nice. Hopefully that will happen more and more in the future. And then who knows, if the Krishna Avanti schools really kick off and other schools start to sing, like these Rudolf Steiner schools, they start to see that the kids coming out of these schools are a better asset for society, for having a peaceful society, that they may think we need to reinvest. And then maybe part of the curriculum will be that someone who knows Krishna conscious philosophy will be explaining to the kids some basic simple truths, you know. Satisfaction, people are thinking that satisfaction is like a reward that you get once you've accumulated a lot of things. And so they're tuned in, I can only be satisfied once I get this, once I get that, once I achieve this, so that's like the donkey and the carrot. You keep the donkey moving forward because it's always thinking it'll be satisfied once it gets this. And the whatever it is that they're trying to get is always just ahead of them. They never get their teeth into it. See, the problem is if the donkey does get his teeth in the carrot, then you don't get any work done. The donkey eats the carrot, thinks that was nice, and then there's just a string hanging in front of it. Nobody wants to run after a string, so the donkey thinks, okay, I think I'll just sit down now and chill out. I've had a nice carrot, so fine. So the whole point is, people cannot be allowed to get satisfied. Or what happens is, just as they eat the carrot, they get a bigger one that looks even juicier than the last one and say, well, that was okay, but look at this one. Look at this iPhone. This iPhone can make your teeth go white when you look at it, and make your hair grow back on your head if you're balding, and you know, you can butter your toast with it. And they go, oh, really? Okay. So then they throw the other carrot away, and they say, well, I'll go for that one. So they just have to keep making the carrot shinier and slicker, and so they can do more cool things. And that's how technology is. Technology has become perverted now into a mechanism for consumerism. But technology, the original idea of technology is, how can we get people to lead better lives by doing less work? So let's invent a light bulb that lasts a lifetime, a razor blade that never goes blunt, a car that never needs repaired, a pair of trousers that never wear out. They could do that. But the technology has been perverted into, well, we won't make any money doing that, so forget that one. And if people keep doing that, they'll be healthy. That means we can't sell any pharmaceuticals. Okay, forget that one. So instead of going towards a healthier and more sustainable and satisfying life, we're going to one which is making people more suicidal and more cancer-ridden and more frustrated. And well, yeah, okay, I know it's not so good, but at least we're making a lot of money this way. Problem is, the people that are making a lot of money, they're also sharing the same fate. So how long does it take before people wise up that it's not doing them any good either, you know? Their grandchildren will inherit the mess that they've made now through, not being far-sighted enough to see how their exploitation will destroy everything. So how long is it going to take before people wise up? In society, if everyone doesn't win, then everyone loses, because we are collectively all part of the same consciousness. The way karma works is you all share the fate of wherever you induce other people to suffer. So it's better that everyone wins rather than everyone loses. Any questions or comments? They do this funny little cartoon, and it's an alien coming over to look at the earth, and there's this man, and he's just exploiting everything, and he's trashed the earth to the point where there's no vegetation left, no animals left. He's just lying. He's sitting in this deck chair, and he's fat and grotesque, and the aliens look at the mess he's made of the planet, and so they squash him into the ground. A thing comes out, this flying saucer, and just goes on his head, and then the aliens fly. Of course, they're disgusted. Just trash the planet. And they did a film called Wall-E, and it was they trashed the planet, so all the people had to go and live in a spaceship for like 50 years, and and they're floating around waiting, and they keep putting a seed down every now and again to see if it's going to start growing, but the atmosphere is so toxic nothing will grow, so they're just waiting in this spaceship floating around outside this burnt earth, and then they put this little seed down and it grows, and they realize, oh, everything's good, and they realize they can come back down, but they've been in space for so long, they've got these like little things that they fly around in, like little life belts, that when they come down on the earth, they can't stand up. They're all fat and they've got no tone in their muscles, and they're all like, they're just wasted in the spaceship, floating around outside. So it's in the ether. People are aware of it. They're aware that to some degree, and Krishna consciousness can help join up all the dots for them and show them how this means this and this leads to that, and that's why that's happened like this. If you join all the dots up, then you get the picture. Then you'll say, okay, so now we need a reset. We're talking about this pandemic as the reset. So Krishna consciousness is resetting the paradigm. The two paradigms, how things are and how things should be. So let's see realistically how are things, and realistically how should they be. We should go back to a simpler life, more in tune with nature, a more natural, healthy life. Srila Prabhupada says in the Native Instruction, he says they criticize that we are leading a primitive lifestyle because we want to simplify things. So they're criticizing us. But it's funny how the simple things, it's like all the things in Vedic culture, Punam, Punam, everything is perfect, everything is complete. So they would say, well, we have this, like, take the chapati, right? The chapati is a round thing, and you make it out of grains, and it puffs up, and you put some butter on it, and that's it. That's as good as it gets. That's a chapati. And then they say, no, we want to reinvent the chapati. We've made this new thing. It's triangular, and it's crispy, and it's got glucosinate in it, and aspartame, and a bit of this and a bit of that, and it's more spicy. And so they want to throw out what is. So if we can go back to the simple music from Cartel, Mridanga, chapati, sabji, chont, spice, rice, this is real food, this is real living, And they're saying, no, you're primitive, you have to have this thing, it's all these different things mixed together with all these chemicals, and that's what modern people should be eating. But it's not as healthy, it's more expensive, it's a greater cost to the Earth's resources, and it gives you cancer. So how's that a step forward? Prabhupada said they used to eat off gold plates and now they eat off plastic plates, and they're calling it progress. So just being cheated. Well, on that cheery note, ISKCON Govinda Ki,
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Ki,
Jai.
Go Premanandi,
Haribol, the grace of Lord Shri Krishna Prabhu Ki.
all of you Ki.